Ukraine is battling to stabilize the mounting Russian pressure in Kharkiv. Ukrainian President Volodymr Zelenksy said that more troops had been sent to the area and that the Ukrainian army said that it had partially halted Russia's advances. To talk more on the ongoing war and the on-ground situation, we're now being joined by Fred Weyer. He's a journalist and a political commentator. He's joining us live from Moscow. Thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on WION, Mr. Weyer. I want to first start by asking you that Ukrainian President Volodymr Zelenksy has said that the situation in northeast is extremely difficult but under control, especially after thwarting an invasion of Vobvchansk, while Moscow has made inroads in Kharkiv. According to you, where do you think the war is headed to?
I think Russia is got the full initiative in the war. This has become clear over the past couple of months, and that the Russians are not looking for any big breakthroughs, but seeking to grind down the Ukrainians. They perceive that the Ukrainians are on the back foot, very much shortage of not just ammunition and materiel, but a serious shortage of manpower. This is perhaps Ukraine's biggest crisis right now, that they can't recruit enough people to fill the trenches, to especially infantry, and therefore this gives Russia the freedom to choose their moments and their places. And they have a long front and they have a long border all the way from Belarus to the eastern part of Ukraine, so they can strike where they wish. And this is what they're doing. They're drawing off the Ukrainians. Ukraine has rushed a lot of forces to the Kharkiv region, thereby denuding their defenses in the Donbass. So this is the Russian game. I don't think they intend to try to take Kharkiv right now. The city is big. It's the second biggest city in Ukraine and probably well defended. But as it turned out, and this is something maybe we shouldn't have been surprised about, is that all the defenses that were supposedly built in the north, in the Kharkiv region by Ukraine, didn't get constructed. Instead, the money was stolen, apparently, and so the endemic corruption in Ukraine is becoming another really bad and debilitating factor for them.
Right, Mr. Weyer, speak of how Russia has an edge in the ongoing war, and at the moment it is directing its most intense assaults on the front line. You gave us a recap of where they are headed to, but there are also reports indicating that Putin does not have the troops or the manpower to take Kharkiv. What is your assessment of that report?
I think that's true. The forces that have invaded in the north in 2 places, and perhaps soon it will be 3 places, are relatively small. I mean, there are new recruits that have been trained up and armed up over the past several months, but there certainly aren't enough of them to storm a city the size of Kharkiv. So that's true, and I don't think the Russians even want to. I think as I said, their strategy is to grind the Ukrainians down. They perceive that they're weakening, flagging, morale is sagging, shortages of everything building up, and I think the Russian calculation is that Ukraine will at some point collapse.
But we've touched upon what's happening on the ground. Let's also speak about the diplomacy that's playing. Russian President Vladimir Putin met Chinese President Xi Jinping in China, where they agreed on a political solution for the ongoing war in Ukraine. Your assessment of that, and perhaps what impact will the meeting of the 2 leaders have on the Ukraine war?
Well, I think if to go by much of what we read in the Western media right now, people in the West, I mean, people in authority, people even in big think tanks, are just waking up to the reality of this Russia-China compact. Like, you couldn't call it an alliance yet, I guess, but increasingly China has chosen to go with Russia for strategic reasons, even though its bigger trading partners are in the West. Russia is much more reliable. It has there's a land border that can't be affected by sanctions. So that union, or whatever you want to call it, is greatly strengthened clearly by this recent visit, and that's going to make a big difference for Russian economy. Will be backstopped by China.
Right, my last question to Mr. Wai. Do you think the Kremlin could be prepared to return to peace talks that were abandoned almost 2 years ago?
Not on the same terms. It's one of the most unfortunate and tragic things about this war is that they had a deal 2 years ago that would have been quite acceptable to both sides, and somehow it fell through. We still don't know why or all the reasons why, but now so much blood has been shed, so much destruction, so much hatred, and now I think that the Russians intend to finish this on the battlefield, and that their terms for Ukraine will be much, much harsher than they would have been 2 years ago. And it's increasingly likely that that end is, coming within sight.
Right. Right, Mr. Wai, thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on WION with your insights.
Thank you.